Professor Oh, what do you make of the apparent agreement between the Chinese Special Envoy Wu Dawei and also the South Korean government regarding the Korean Peninsula?
Well, first of all, South Koreans are very now relieved of the fear of possible attack by the United States in April. The agreement is a timely one that South Koreans have been looking for because we needed some kind of assurance from the Chinese side that China will help in tandem with the United States and the neighboring countries in the neutralizing the escalation of the threat from North Korea. So this is a welcoming start for Mr. Wu's visit here in Korea, I think.
But Professor Oh, one thing has to be mentioned because your country still does not have a president yet, and party politics still going on. So without a sole person making the decision on international policy, can others take the words of South Korea seriously?
Well, at the moment, the South Korean government is in transition, but we have now two candidates, potential candidates for presidency later in May. So as long as China engages in talks with various possible parties in South Korea, as well as in America, I think people outside will take it seriously, especially, for example, Japan is taking it very seriously as they return their ambassador back to Korea now. So I think if the situation is getting serious, but the threat is getting controlled, I think, gradually controlled.
Well, the Japanese ambassador left South Korea because on disputes on other issues, not necessarily about the presidency, though. But Mr. Teng, let me ask you about this. China were extremely concerned about the THAAD deployment by the United States in South Korea. Do you think that issue has been resolved in any way?
No, I don't think so, because the THAAD system deployed by the United States actually, used by the U.S. troops, by the U.S. soldiers, not by ROK soldiers. So I don't think ROK government has any, a specific influence on the deployment after, the military drill this month. So the United States actually take THAAD deployment as one part of its missile, deployment system in Asia Pacific region. It's only one part of the whole system. So I think at this moment, after the military drill, the United States will, consolidate its position and its deployment, and THAAD will be there forever.
Are you concerned?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Nekrassov, Russia also expressed its concerns about the deployment of the THAAD system. Do you think the latest situation after the summit between China and the United States, after the recent movement by all sides, has that concern gone for Russia?
Well, I think that Russia is very, it's a mixed feeling of bemusement and anxiety in Russia, because I think the Trump administration is resorting to the sort of brinkmanship we have never seen before in the nuclear age. Such brinkmanship can be allowed, in World War II and World War I, but in a nuclear age, to make threats like that, to change your policy in a matter of hours, not just weeks or months, but hours, this is very dangerous. And I think Russia is very concerned that America doesn't really know what it is doing. And as regards the Korean Peninsula, I think that, what has been missing for many years is that always the blame lies with the North Korea. We never look at the bigger picture. Well, we do look, but it's never being delivered, this image, to the Western audiences of America and South Korea actively provoking North Korea. This has never been a big issue, in the talks.
Right.
It's always been concentrated, how dangerous DPRK is, and nothing else. I think it's time to really, really change the script of this whole situation.
Well, at the time we are talking to one another, obviously the audience had a chance to hear different kinds of opinions. Therefore, Mr. Nekrassov, I want to continue by asking, what about Russia? Earlier, when DPRK tested a mid-range missile just 1 week ago, Russia has raised its so-called military alertness level. Was that targeting at the time? Many people were asking already at the United States because of using the name of a North Korea provocation. The U.S. might take actions, therefore harm the interests of Russia. Or actually, Russia is genuinely concerned about what is going on in North Korea that would have an enormous impact on Russia's security.
Well, I think Russia is concerned because the situation has become totally unpredictable. You know, just basically an hour ago, President Trump has tweeted that North Korea is looking for trouble. And then that was just now. And then he says that if China is not going to help America, America will deal with North Korea by itself. You know, such language at a time when tensions are so high around the Korean Peninsula, when American strike force is there, I don't even remember such a situation developing so quickly and so rapidly. And I must say that after what we witnessed in Syria, I think, you know, anything can happen now around North Korea. And although we're hearing, you know, we have, for example, the American media reporting what sort of scenarios are being discussed in the White House. They're openly talking about killing the leadership of North Korea, about hitting the nuclear installations. I mean, this is becoming so out of control that, you know, if I was an advisor now to the Kremlin, I would be, you know, hitting the alarm bell.
Oh, well, of course, the media would report on many aspects as long as they believe there are information leading them to. But the question really is, what about the countries, the governments involved? Professor Oh, South Korea, in fact, could be the country that is most concerned about the security because you are in the closest neighborhood and you belong to the same people, the Korean people. So what about South Korea's assessment of the U.S. deployment recently, about the USS Carl Vinson, about the SAS system in your country, and also the latest development between United States and China? How is South Korea looking at all of these moving factors?
Well, there is no such one voice in this country. The country is divided into different groups and interest groups and politicians and political parties. But the majority of people believe that peace is the priority of this country. So in order to maintain peace on the peninsula, I think they are looking at China as a major you know, game breaker here, so that China can restore some sort of stability in the region again. Donald Trump's argument is also the same, I think, that he wants China to take more actions here to restore trust and stability in the region. But most Koreans don't believe what he's saying in terms of the United States will take the measures by its own hand if China doesn't help. Well, we don't believe that kind of argument because, number one, in the past, for the last 5-6 decades, America has tried almost everything to neutralize North Korean threat, but they all failed. So I don't think Donald Trump has any other new options for this current crisis, but they probably have to wait and see how China reacts to this, and China helps cool down the situation right now.
Mr. Teng, China, 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 and China. Everybody is talking about China, but the thing is, what can China do? Can China offer DPRK with the diplomacy option, or rather it has to come from the United States? Besides using sticks, which is sanctions and further commercial punishment, what other things and tools does China have on hand? That is the real question, isn't it?
Yeah, you are right. We have heard repeatedly in recent days that China always on the top, you know, of the newspaper and by the United States officials. We said China should play a role in this game and China should contribute much more to the game. But I think the situation in Korean Peninsula is that this is a competition of course, between China and the United States, but the key player is not China. I think at this moment, China would like to be mediator again, and the key players, I think, are two: the United States and DPRK. The United States would like to, put more, pressure on the tension in the Korean Peninsula,
right.
and the DPRK leader would like to have some channel to contact with the United States, their counterpart in the United States. But I think at this moment, each side, even China, should be very cautious on any action taken by the government, and also we should be very cautious on any step taken by the other countries, and not right now, because any clash, for example, any accidental action against each other might be a war in this region. That might be disaster for all the countries in this region.
Yes, before we go, I do want to ask Mr. Nekrassov a final question. I mean, Russia now, with the issue of Syria, seems to be in a difficult situation regarding its relations with the United States. So how much power, in a way, Russia still has in terms of trying to bring consensus to the Korean Peninsula issue?
Well, I think Russia still has influence over this issue, and I think we will see that influence projected during the talks between Rex Tillerson and Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. And I'm sure this issue will be high on the agenda along with Syria and international terrorism. So Russia is still a key player, and I also think that Russia will be telling Mr. Tillerson that the worst thing it could do about the crisis in the Korean Peninsula is to make the regime in Pyongyang desperate. Now, this is the worst situation. When you look at the way China handled this situation, it never put too much pressure on DPRK in order for it to become, boxed in and not knowing really what to do. Now the Americans are actually doing that. And this is very dangerous. And I hope that Mr. Lavrov will pass this message to Mr. Tillerson and automatically to Mr. Trump.
Okay.
Because what we are seeing now is a situation which can get out of control in a moment, in an hour.
All right. Thank you so much. Before we go, I do want to get the other two guests also 15 to 20 seconds for every one of you. Any options now that you see, Professor Oh? Next step.
Well, I think we need a new leadership in this country first, who can engage in talks with North Korea directly, similar to the previous regime that had been actively involved in peace talks with North Korea. We need to restore that first, I think.
New leadership needs to be responsible for the new directions. Mr. Teng, final words.
A common ground should be found at this moment for all the parties concerned, not to manipulate the situation for one country or for another. This is actually a crucial moment for all the countries in the region.